Thank you for staying tuned to Udala Radio 104.7 FM. It's 16 minutes past 9 a.m. and we are saying welcome to the Polity, a Tuesday edition of this 10th day of March 2026. And we are poised to serve you the dishes for today. When I talk about dishes, I mean those good stories that are captured by various newspapers this very morning. Don't forget that what we do on this program is to bring you headlines from different newspapers and then take conversations from some of the topical developments as reported by these very newspapers. My name is Franklin Ebukano saying welcome again to the Polity Tuesday edition. And there are interesting developments in the Polity from Anambra State here down to the national level. Of course, we talk about the planned protests against First Power and the EDC being planned by energy consumers in Anambra State for March 14. Yesterday, there was a meeting between the Anambra State Police Command and the organizers of this very protest. Police is asking them to shelve the protest because of insecurity, because it might be hijacked by hoodlums. But the organizers are saying we are resolved to go ahead and have our protest, and we are giving assurance that nobody is going to hijack the protest. And guess what? The convener of this very protest, Comrade Toby, he said that he should be held accountable if anything goes awful or goes awry. And he wrote a letter to the governor of Anambra State saying that they are going to ensure that the protest goes on in a very polite manner. That's the way he put it. Then talk about the visit by the governor of Anambra State to 10 schools in his Sofe. Sofe is in Agwata local government area of Anambra State. Yesterday he was there, and he paid a visit to see how students and teachers have been complying to the government order to end the Monday sit at home. And he left them with a message saying, we have to end this. Then he goes to River State, where River State House Assembly rejected 4 commissioner nominees by Governor Fubara Sim. The nominees came for screening yesterday. In fact, that screening was live on television, and they were asked different questions. According to the House, they were scrutinized. They asked them rigorous questions and they got answers from them. At the end of the day, 4 of the 9 were rejected. According to the House, they failed to prove that they were square holes or square pegs in square holes. Then you talk about what is happening in Iran, and that very crisis there has been affecting life here in Nigeria. If you go to petrol stations now, you will see that many of them are closed, and those who are selling petroleum products, a liter of petrol now sells for between 1,300 naira and 1,400 naira, depending on where you are purchasing the product from. And it's been raising concerns across quarters. If you look at the papers, you see that the papers have these very concerns captured as different headlines this very morning. Of course, if you check the Guardian, you see how the headline is captured there. Check Vanguard, you also see the way the headline is also captured. So you are going to see some of these developments in today's conversation. We did talk about what happened to BDP yesterday. We talked about the impending court judgment yesterday, and yesterday it happened. At the end of the day, the Turaki-led party seems to be in shambles now. Perhaps they are heading to Supreme Court, but if they stand the chance, only time is going to tell. Then in Zamfara State, the governor has finally left PDP to join the APC, and now APC has 31 governors in Nigeria out of 36 states. And we're asking whether anyone is going to be spared before 2027 general election. So some of these things are developments we have on the papers, and maybe they might form some of the issues for conversation today. I'm not alone. I'm with Tony Sambeki on the analysis desk. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning to you, Franklin Ebuka. Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, the good people of Southeast. Good morning, India Nambara. Good morning, Ndi Onitsha Donidu. Good morning, Ndi Osumo. Good morning, Ndi Afia, Ndi Oluaka, Ndi Oluoyibo, Ndi Nanye Fonyenya. The transporters, many of you are groaning at this point, and those who are finding things difficult for one thing or for one reason or the other. The commuters will also acknowledge our security personnel, the other service providers, essential service providers, different professions. We acknowledge all of you. You're welcome to this very program, the Polity. And today is a very beautiful day. Of course, we know today is Tuesday, and Tuesday, the 10th day in the month of March in the year 2026. We thank God Almighty for His grace, for His love, for His kindness, for making us to be alive this very day to witness different developments. You are welcome. Sit back and enjoy the program. We acknowledge you, we salute you, and we always ensure that you get the best. And remember, we are in the sanctuary to profess the truth and nothing but the truth.
Okay, so we're going to look at the headlines this very morning straight ahead. We have 4 newspapers: Vanguard, The Nation, The Punch, and the Guardian newspapers. We'll begin with the headlines we have on Vanguard newspaper. And the big story there has it like Middle East war, hardship deepens, with petrol selling at 1,300 naira per litre. That story can be found on page 5. It has some riders. Dangote adjusts gantry prices of petrol, diesel to 1,175 naira, 1,620 naira per litre. Promises steady supply. Crude oil price hits $110 per barrel. Transporters raise fares by over 50%. And this very morning, of course, if you are using public transport system, you see that there has been increase in fare. Take, for instance, those who commute between Moore Junction to Main Market, you might have seen an increase about 100 naira or 200 naira on the fare. And those who commute from Oka to Onitsha, you can see that there has been increase in fare between 500 naira and 1,000 naira. So it's already telling on the economy. And in some cases too, the prices of commodities are being affected. Another story says, PDP, Turaki heads to Supreme Court as appeal court quashes a Ibadan convention. That story can be found on page 9 of a Vanguard newspaper. Student teachers escape death as 4-story building collapses in Lagos. That story is on page 6. I must say that it was an escape by the whiskers, because barely had the students and teachers been evacuated from that very building that it collapsed. Another story says, Middle East crisis, FPI exit wicked naira to 1,422 naira per dollar. That story is on page 19. Commanding officer, soldiers, dozens of terrorists killed in Bomo military base attack on page 7. U.S. warns of threat to facilities, schools in Nigeria, page 26 of Vanguard. Dangote leads with 28.5 billion naira net worth as Africa's billionaires add $20 billion to fortunes. That story is on page 8. And I saw a piece which was written by somebody. He said that there are many Igbo billionaires, and he's been wondering why none of them has been able to make it to the Forbes list. And he was saying that maybe it boils down to the fact that whenever they make money, they either go to their villages to build big mansions and then build hotels and restaurants. And none of them engages in production whereby their earnings and worth can be traced and be recorded. Then another story we have on the front page is about the Mr. and Mrs. For those who like to read comedy, you can check that on the front page of Vanguard. Then over to the Nation newspaper. The big story says court kicks out PDP NWC. Another one says Zamfara Governor Lawa becomes APC's 31st governor. Another story says NMPCL post 385 billion naira profit after tax for January. The story is on page 7 of the Nation. It has a rider firm generated 2.57 trillion naira. Court of Appeal dismisses Ayedatiwa's suit on re-election on page 6 of the Nation, while Rivers Assembly rejected 4 Fubara Commissioner nominees. Page 2. War against terrorists will be total, says Tinubu. The story is on page 4. Somebody might ask, was the president aware that he said that? based on the way we have been addressing the issue of insecurity. DEAP Capital transforms to Africa's minerals, metals finance powerhouse. It has a rider Saudi, UAE, European, other investors back Nigerian group. Okay, we go over to the Punch newspaper. The story beside the nameplate says PDP crisis, Makinde block heads to Supreme Court after appeal court loss. Page 7 of the Punch. Businesses brace for inflation surge as petrol hit 1,300 naira per litre. On page 2, it has riders. Dangote defends fuel price hikes as NLC pushes back. G7 weighs emergency oil release to tame soaring crude prices. OPS economists flag imminent commodity price rise. Another story says 2002 World Cup coach Onibwinde dies at 88. Stories on page 45. Ayeda Tiwa loses bid to amend re-election eligibility suit on page 14. Rivers Assembly defends rejection of Fubara's 4 nominees, page 14. A student injured in stampede as Lagos school building collapses, pages 4 and 5 of Punch newspaper. Funding gaps behind February salaries delay, Accountant General on page 38. Another headline on the front page of the Punch says IGP visit Kwara, vows to flush out bandits on page 14. US warns citizens of fresh terror threat in Nigeria on page 42. And the last story says these schools pocket 2.3 trillion naira despite erratic power supply. That story can be found on page 37 of the Punch newspaper. And we dash to the last newspaper this morning, which is the Guardian. Guardian has some interesting stories, and the big one says oil rally retreats as Nigerians await palm price review. The story is on page 6 of Guardian newspaper. You see a breakdown of what has been happening on that very front page. One of them says prices surged by 47% in Nigeria, stable in other African markets. A stakeholder cites loopholes in deregulation as subsidy worries resurface. Inflation concerns over rising fuel prices as Dangote has shows of supply. And this one says petrol hit 1,285 naira in Abuja, 1,250 naira in Ibadan, and 1,200 naira in Lagos. Another headline says insecurity, vehicle theft. Vehicle theft upsets Tinkan users despite U.S. commendation on page 15. Troops confirm a repel Boko Haram ISWAP attack in Borno, Yobe on page 20 of The Guardian. PDP crisis deepens as Turaki heads to Supreme Court. ADC woos Makinde Muhammad. That story can be found on page 6 of The Guardian newspaper. Opposition state shrink to 5 as Zamfara governor joins APC on page 3. CSO raises alarm over children, women, malnutrition in IDP camps on page 5. Airfares might rise as aviation fuel hits 1,600 naira per litre. The story is on page 5 of Guardian newspaper. And the final headline we have this very morning says Tinubu Obasanjo thus seeks stronger African trade at IATF 2027 signing on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. So these are the headlines we have this very morning on these very newspapers. We have highlighted 4 of them, and next will be for us to begin the conversation proper. Don't forget that you can join this very conversation by visiting our Facebook page, Udala Radio 104.7 FM. We are live on the page. The video is already up there. You can share the video. You can drop your comments. You can as well like. And if you want to explore the options for this very communication, you can visit our YouTube channel. Likewise, our Instagram handle, Udala Radio. Let's get to deepen the conversation on this very platform. Thank you for being there. Stay with us.
You're listening to The Polity. Get involved now.
Okay, thank you for staying tuned to Udala Radio 4.7 FM. You are listening to the Polity. My name is Franklin Ebkanda with Tony Olisambeki this very morning. And it's 9:31 a.m. and we are poised to begin today's conversation based on the issues we have on the dailies this very morning. We talked about what is happening to the price of petrol across Nigeria now. And we can look at this very story based on what we have been seeing around us. Reports we have, have it that many petrol stations are not open, and those who are open are not even dispensing petrol because of, precautionary approach to trade. It's no longer news that the price of crude oil in the international market has increased. In fact, as of the last count, as of yesterday afternoon, it hit all-time high to about close to $120 per barrel. But as of this very morning, we understand that the price of a barrel of crude oil has dropped to about $88 per barrel and the $94 per barrel, depending on the variation of the crude oil in the international market. But what we have seen is that in the past couple of days, we have seen the price of petrol, the price of diesel. In fact, talk about all the petroleum products, they have risen in the country, and the people are beginning to groan. Nigerians are now groaning because we have seen an increase in prices of some other things, even in transport fare. And the big concern now is that the gains that this government has made in terms of economic stability, they might all disappear within 1 month if nothing happens at this point in time. And then the other question is, with what is playing out now, are we expecting government to bring in any intervention at this point in time, or we are going to watch it and see how the whole thing ends? After all, Trump said the war in Iran is going to end very soon. And we have seen a drop in the price of crude oil in the international market. We gathered that yesterday there was a call between Trump and Vladimir Putin, and they were trying to make arrangement on how to, open up on the Russian oil. Perhaps it can help to stabilize the price of crude oil in the international market. So, Tony, the issue of crude oil, what is happening to it, and how Nigerians are feeling it. Businesses here are bracing up for inflation surge, because we have seen the price of petrol hitting 1,300 per liter. Let's begin from your experiences so far before we talk about what could possibly happen, whether we should wait out or talk about intervention.
Well, it has not been easy, just like every other person. It has been very, very difficult for every Nigerian at this point. But there are those who are privileged. And then if you talk about those who are privileged, those who will not be affected by the whole drama going on with Iran and then the impact here in Nigeria. We are looking at the impact in Nigeria, the assessments or impact assessments. It has been a very troubling period for most Nigerians. Over 200 million people, they are feeling the impact of this war as the result of not planning ahead of time. We saw this coming. What did we do when we knew that this would come? And if it comes, how are we going to be affected? What are the practical measures are we going to put in place to ensure that the overriding influence, overriding impact of the war does not in any way decimate our people? We did not plan at all. Did we plan for this? We did not. What did we do? We did nothing. Did we put measures in place to serve as buffers or absorbers? We did not do anything, and we exposed our economy to international drama. It is very unfortunate the way we have it. You ask my personal experience. Before now, if you go to a fuel station to buy petrol for 20 liters, let's assume 20 liters. Before now, I usually buy 17,200 for 20 liters. But now, if you go to the same fuel station to buy the same number of liters, you buy 28,000. From that is around 11,000 additional. If you ask that, it is humongous. It is totally disturbing, unacceptable, and many people may not sustain that. And it tells you that we are import dependent. Most of our macro and microeconomic metrics heavily rely on price of especially fuel. We're not talking about diesel. We are told that diesel sells around 1617 at this point, or from where it was before. It is astronomical, and we've talked about this yesterday, and we did say that Nigeria seems to be the most hard hit in this whole thing. We've x-rayed other countries, the increases we've seen in their own domain, and these increases are not as compared to what we have here. If you calculate percentage increases, Nigeria's own is outrageous, overwhelming, disturbing, and coupled with the fact that we have problem with electricity. We are told before now that for you to fire our thermal turbines, we need about 100 and something million standard cubic feet of gas, but now it has been reduced to about 40%, about 65 million thereabouts, to do the same thing. And that's more reason generating companies are not generating. Of course, they have said that they are being owed about 6 to 7 trillion naira in debt, and if these amounts are not paid off, they may not be able to go back to full business. They may not be able to optimize. Many of them borrowed money from banks, and banks on their necks, and instead of generating more output, but they are concerned about how to meet up with deadlines given to them by banks, being owed such amount of money and not being able to optimize production with the level they have gone now, very abysmal level. The transmission company and the distribution companies cannot even distribute anything. What they do now is to ration power. There's no more band A, band B, band C, band D. I remember when they pulled and rolled out these bands with the impression that things are going to normalize. What have you seen now? Can you differentiate any band? Is there anything like band A again, or band B, or band C? There is bandless now. That's what we have. We have no band. And what they do now is where they load shed or possibly load balancing. They give this side, they have for one day or some hours within a day, they give the other side, so they have a way of doing it. By the time it gets back to the next person, 2 days may have been off. Many people have not even seen power for 1 week, for some days. No explanation. But from what we've gathered, it's as a result of low production of electricity, which has gone below 40% as it were before, as a result of debt and other things, even the vandalization of the national grid, the collapse of the national grid. We've seen that many times, oftentimes. It is a very difficult experience. Go back now to anywhere. Transportation fares are high. Farm produces, for you to bring it from the agrarian areas to urban areas, these things have gone up. And it also add up to the price of these farm products. We are at a point saying that things are coming back, things are normalizing. Price of rice, price of yam, price of tomatoes, price of pepper, price of onions. At a point, these things were coming down, and we are saying, let's see how far it can also come down. But now, the successes, the records, some of these things have been immediately annihilated. Every country has got what it used to protect the economy. What is that? Can we point out to say that we use this as a shield for our economy? What is that do we use to shield our economy against external factors, as we have in what is going on in Iran? Listen to Dangote Petroleum or Refinery. When they were making the point, they say that they buy the crude at international price. That's why they keep on increasing the price each time the international price of this crude goes high. They keep increasing because they don't buy at any domestic price. We don't have domestic price.
Tony, I read somewhere that Dangote Refinery claimed that they buy some Nigerian exported crude from some other international oil organizations. I don't know if you've seen that. Like NNPCL exports crude oil to other countries. Dangote still buy the same Nigerian crude oil from other countries.
Well, these are allegations or submissions made by Dangote. Of course, we've not heard from the other side, from the other quarters. Dangote has made a lot of statements concerning this, and we have not seen the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited making a counterclaim otherwise. But we would also expect to hear from their own side and X-ray the two statements and see what we can make out of it. But if it is true, because Dangote claiming that it buys from some countries that the NNPC Limited had sold to, and for Dangote to buy from these countries, it means that they must also add something. And even when we think that we can get some of these things here, and one thing you should also understand that there are many oil mining companies in Nigeria, and most of these oil mining companies, once they paid their royalty fee, paid their taxes, they can sell to whoever they want to sell to. We have so many of them. I had thought by now Dangote should also go into oil exploration apart from refinery. The idea of going into exploration so that you have raw crude supply as you would wish, as you would want. I don't know if they have oil, but they may be thinking about that. I'm not here to give them business advice. But having seen that in this game, it's all about profitability. Everybody's interested in profiteering. And where they are not considering the poor masses. Nobody's considering how Nigerians will feel or how to make Nigerians feel safe, even when God bless us with this product. The only difference is that government makes revenue from this, and from that, some projects are being done, even when these projects are not to our own satisfaction. If not for the fact that government makes revenue, outside oil, I don't think how we'll be making revenue. Take oil away. Are you going to talk about taxes? How are you going to tax people when you have not provided the enabling system, enabling infrastructure, enabling environment for you to tax people when you have not provided that? What kind of tax are you going to generate from these people?
Now, Tony, the concern Nigerians have is that Nigeria is running a money economy where everything depends on petrol and diesel. So anything that happens to any of these two is going to have a reverse effect on the economy. And now we're beginning to see that. Anybody who plies the road, we know that there has been increase in transport fare. Anybody who buys commodities in the market will know that there has been slight increase in some places because everybody wants to, tap from a situation. Then the price of petrol has increased. So we are likely to have this impacting on the economy. And the concern is that the little gains that this very government said that they have made in terms of economic stability might diminish within 1 month if nothing happens. Now, I try to look at some countries in Africa who have not had this significant increase in the price of PMS in these very countries, despite the fact that they are also being affected by what is happening in Iran. If you look at countries like South Africa, Kenya, Sierra Leone, Namibia, Uganda, Angola, Ghana, there have been slight increase in the price of these PMS, but it's not as significant or as big as what it is in Nigeria. If you're going to run the percentages, you might be having like 2% in these very countries or 3%. In Nigeria, we're talking about 30-25% increase in this very price. Now, and I discovered that some of these very countries have found a way to use regulatory buffers, pricing windows and some targeted interventions to ensure that the prices don't go haywire. So for their country, Nigeria, we have our peculiarities. And at this point in time, government says subsidies is gone. And we have also seen the fact that government wants Dangote refinery to flourish. That was why it even fired Ahmed Farouk, so that they will be able to have somebody who will be able to work hand in hand with Dangote refinery to ensure that we have stability in this very economy. So at this point in time, based on what we are facing, what are you thinking that the government might be considering? Should government consider, bringing in an interim subsidy to be able to create a buffer for Nigerians? Or is there any other thing you think that government can do at this point in time to help us?
Well, from the look of things, let's begin with Dangote. As we speak right now, we would also understand that Dangote buys crude from different sources. Of course, we know that there is a special arrangement or agreement between Dangote and NNPC where the refinery can purchase about 5 cargoes in a month in Naira rather than dollar. And we also understand that the 5 cargo, because Dangote says that its capacity is about 650,000 barrels per day, and it is optimizing, is in fact thinking of expanding. But the crude supplied to it by the NNPC is about 30 to 40% of what it actually needed. It is important to know that the U.S. has become one of the refinery's most critical suppliers. The American West Texas Intermediate, WTI, oil, according to Dangote, is even cheaper and more consistently available than Nigerian grades on the open market. And we are told that the U.S. imports, of course, from Dangote, has accounted up to 60% of the Dangote refinery's monthly crude intake. And you also have West Africa, Angola, Grisol, and then pass flow grades, and also Equatorial Guinea, even the North Africa, the Algeria Saharan blend, and also South and Central America. These account for 10% of Dangote's intakes. In all of these, the summaries, the Nigerian government, through the specialized arrangement with the NNPC, gives Dangote about 30 to 40% of crude intake. US provides about 50 to 60%, and then the other West African countries like Angola, Algeria, and even some parts of Brazil account for almost remaining 10%. In all of this, it means that Dangote, that's the irony, that it has not been saturated with the crude it expects from Nigeria, and B that it is the way it is. They are not in any way. In fact, Dangote can be seen as a company, as a local company operating in a foreign matrix as a result of what it is. Can Nigerian government in any way show up the amount of crude they supply to Dangote and possibly supply to Dangote at a lesser price so that it can regulate the market price Dangote ships out? They are more like, I think that's the only way to go, because if you allow subsidy as you may think, or the way we had it before, where people bring in products, come and make subsidy claim, you are going to open another window for corruption. Situations where our crude sold to Dangote, government comes in and then see if it can really tarry with the price so that the output will not be excruciating. We have oil windfall, just like I was telling you before we began the program. We have oil windfall as we speak today. If you look at our budget benchmark, you can understand that there is oil windfall. But just like you pointed earlier on, Frank, as we speak now, the price of petrol at international market is about $91 per barrel. But it hit about $120 as at yesterday. And if you talk about $120, the crude sold yesterday by NNPC Limited and also many Nigerian subsidiaries, that's so much money. Much money. What would the windfall? What is windfall? Windfall is unexpected revenue. That's windfall. Unexpected. So what would the windfall be used for? Nigerians are passing through hell. Can the windfall in any way be used to cushion the plight Nigerians, many of them are seeing or passing through? You asked, what do we do? We can have another set of arrangement with Dangote, since Dangote is the major oil supplier we have in the country. Have a specialized agreement where the country sells at a particular price, so that Dangote will also sell at a particular pump price, so it won't be so much. While the other ones we sell outside the country, we make so much gain and we continue the windfall. We cannot say we are in the windfall. People will pass through what they are passing through now. I can't pretend that all is well. I cannot pretend, because it's affecting many families. People, it also affects our Naira valuation. Once there is inflation, Naira loses its value. Inflation is more like money losing its value. What 10 Naira or what 10,000 could have bought for you will not be the case again. The 10,000 you have in your bank account or you have in your drawer, you have somewhere, if you go back to the market to use that 10,000, the value changes. That's inflation. And nobody would want that. And the sources took with that 10,000 was made, they remain constant. It is really, really disturbing. Government needs to come in here to see how it can cushion this effect. We know very well that Dangote, as we speak now, sell to different countries, not just Nigeria. As we mentioned earlier on, of course, he sells to South Africa, he sells refined to so many countries. But we can do something out of this. The man is just into business. He's talking business. He's not talking about any consideration For him, he felt that the government cannot supply even 60 to 80% of raw crude it needs to do his business, since it can get about 30 to 40%, and United States of America gives it about 50 to 60%. And everything it does, the only difference is the fact that government supplies him in nairas against dollars, which mentioned earlier on, and it saves the government from the foreign exchange wahala.
Okay, so Tony, if you look at Nigeria now, you see that everybody seems to be taking advantage of this very chaotic adjustment in the price of petrol and some other petroleum products, basically petrol, cooking gas and the diesel. As it stands now, if you go to petrol stations, you will see what we're talking about. And like I said, the other down the other down businesses also taking advantage. Everybody's trying to adjust because somebody will tell you, I can't buy a liter of petrol at 1,400 naira. It's in Burugina Keke 200 naira, 300 naira, because they need to adjust and be able to cover up their business. But let's look at what people have been saying recently about Dangote Refinery, because yesterday we saw that Dangote Refinery increased the ex-gantry price of petrol by another 180 naira. So what it now means is that the retailers we know as the independent marketers, if they're going to Dangote Refinery to buy petrol, they are going to buy a liter at 1,175 naira per liter. So by the time they must have done their expenditure and get the product to their petrol stations, that's why you understand that. That's why you now see they're selling for 1,300 and 1,400 naira per liter. Now people are asking for Dangote Refinery, saying that in a matter of 3 to 4 days, he has increased the price of petrol at least 3 times. Now he was quick to increase as the price of crude oil in the international market was increasing. And I say now that yesterday we witnessed a fall to about $88 per barrel. Is he going to make a quick adjustment in the price at which he sells to these very independent marketers?
Well, I criticize and also condemn the way and manner he was making price adjustment each time there is price increment at the international market. He is not adjusting price on the basis of the way he bought. I believe price adjustment should be on the basis of the price, the products or the raw crudes we are bought. You don't increase price because there is a sharp increment. If you had bought the raw crude at, let's say, 75 or let's say $80 per barrel, if you had bought it at $80 per barrel, and the crude is still at refining stage, there is sharp increment at the international market to $19. You have started adjusting your price to $19, even when the one you bought at $80 is still at refining stage. It makes no sense. It's exploitation. It's exploitation. I don't know if it does it, because I know very well that Dangote sells product to so many countries. In fact, if you start with Africa, he sells his petroleum products to Ghana, Togo, Cameroon, and in fact Angola, Namibia, Central African Republic, Niger Republic, Chad, and Burkina Faso. They are in active talks to commence sale of these products. If you talk about the global exports, of course, he sells to United States of America, especially Florida and New York. He supplies this product to Florida and New York. And if you look at the Europe part of it, he exports diesel and jet fuel to United Kingdom, like Heathrow Airport. He supplies diesel and jet fuel to Heathrow Airport, the part of Spain, and the Tenerife, the France, Belgium, and the Ireland. There are so many countries, in fact, even in South Korea. South Korea is the largest single buyer of Dangote's naphtha. I know very well he also exports to Singapore and Malaysia. So that tells you that he does international business. But what we are talking about is price adjustment. When we were having price increment, he was quick to increase prices, even when the prices of products he had increased were not bought at that price. Now there is a sharp decline yesterday. He did not reflect that. He did not reflect that. What kind of a businessman are you, Dangote? He did not reflect that. Price adjustment should be on what the products we have bought, not on any news you hear about increments at the international market, or possibly
Tony, what happens to NNPCL? Because we know that NNPCL also imports petrol, and it was meant to be a competition between Dangote Refinery and the NNPCL. That's why sometimes we saw how the two of them were involved in a price war last year, where NNPCL will be selling at 1,000. Dangote will announce at 900 and something naira. We saw that happen last year. So at this point in time, we're also expecting that we should be able to be seeing that very disparity. I have read some people argue that it's now cheaper to import, finished petroleum products or to import petrol into the country, but we are not seeing that reflecting. Is it that the volume of import by Dangote cannot in any way have any impact on what Dangote is doing?
Well, as we speak currently, we know very well that the NNPCL Limited is more like the middleman. They are not refining. They have shifted the strategy to supporting the private sector, as we have currently. The truth remains that they have reduced their importation status to over 40%. They are not refining, because if you talk about operating their refineries with the ones we have in Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna, as we have them, they are inactive as we speak today because of technical failures and then profitability reviews going on in that refineries. So if you talk about supplying, of course, they provide feedstock to Dangote, more like the crude, and also to local modular plants as we have currently. They have reduced their importation to about 40%. So they primarily import to fill the gap when there are logistic delays at local refineries or to prevent a monopoly. So their importation is now strategic. They come in when there is logistic delay. We call it import to fill the gap. That's the kind of import NNPC Limited does now. Import to fill the gap. And the gap in question could be logistic delays at local refineries or even to prevent monopoly. We've seen that it has been acting as a supplier of last resort. That's what it does now. And that's why we've not seen or heard anything about their own pricing system or pricing template. Before Dangote will marshal out its own pricing template, it comes out, the NNPC Limited comes out to also do its own. But as we speak right now, they have reduced importation to about 40%. And they also do strategic imports, as I've explained earlier on. So that is the status now. Refineries are not operating. The local refineries we have, they are currently inactive.
Okay, so in the midst of the, should I call that criticism that Dangote Refinery has faced on how it was quick to increase the price of petrol, but now we have seen a drop. It hasn't done anything. Yesterday, there was a press conference where the MD of Dangote Refinery, David Bird, he tried to make some explanations, which we'll get to hear from him, and then we conclude on this very conversation.
What are we doing? We are fully exposed to the international commodity market. That needs to be widely understood. We purchase, even under the Crude for Naira program, we purchase Nigerian crude from the Nigerian government at international benchmark-related prices. We then pay international freight rates and international insurance rates in order to bring that crude from the terminal to the refinery. That's about 30-35% of our crude intake, as I've mentioned in previous meetings. However, we're designed around Nigerian crude, so we actively seek additional Nigerian crude cargoes. We buy those on the open market in US dollars. Historically, that's often changed through multiple traders' hands before we get access to it. And all that does is add further costs and premium to purchasing those Nigerian barrels and processing them through Dangote Refinery. And then there's another element about sort of, again, that balance of 30 to 40% of our crude diet that we purchase on the open market, and we've processed a wide variety of crudes, predominantly West Texas, but also from as far afield as South America, Central America, and then obviously we look very closely at West African grades. So fully international, fully exposed in that regard. So I fully acknowledge the pain that is being suffered. We are seeing that. We are doing what we can to ensure that we minimize costs throughout our supply chain. However, our price input is crude at benchmark related prices. freight is benchmarked against freight rates. To put some of those numbers in perspective, I mentioned the crude oil, the Brent. You could go back a week and it was hovering in a stable range of the mid-60s. It's now 118. If you look at freight rates, it would cost us.
Okay, so that was the explanation that came from the MD of Dangote Refinery, David Birdie, yesterday, talking about all the considerations that come to play before they came to decide on at how much a liter of petrol is sold at the retail end of this very process. So, Tony, do you have anything to say in respect to his defense of what is happening within Dangote Refinery?
His defense is nonsensical. He's talking, though, as someone who is exploitative. Why would the Dangote Refinery be operating in this model? There's a model they operate on, replacement cost model. That's the kind of model they operate with. And when you talk about replacement cost model, it means they set the price based on what it will cost them to buy the next batch of crude, not necessarily what they paid for the current batch in the tanks, as I explained earlier on. I explained this. But now, from what he's trying to say, their kind of model is replacement model or replacement cost model. They only think of what it will cost them to buy the next batch of crude, and that's how they set their price, not necessarily what they paid for the current batch in the system. As we said earlier on, just 24 hours ago, Brent crude spiked to nearly $120 as a result of the Middle East crisis. Dangote raised the country price to 1,175 naira to cover the cost of replacing that oil. That is replacement cost model. Now, look at the lag. The crude dropped back to $88 to $91 as we speak today. The crude price has dropped from that $120 spike to about $88 to $91. The refinery is now waiting for the market to settle for several days before they will lower the price. They want to ensure that the drop isn't just a temporary dip before another spike. That is monopolistic tendency and agenda. Okay, I don't want to talk about the international freight they talked about, and then the international insurance fees they talked about. There's some of these things that they do buy from open market, and then when they buy from open market, they pay all these fees and get these things refined. But why would you be operating with such replacement cost model? It is monopolistic.
Quick one. What do you think accounted for this very drop we saw in the price of crude oil in the international market? Something that was selling for $118 per barrel as of yesterday afternoon, but by evening it dropped to about $83 per barrel. Was there any special arrangement, or because the pressure on Iran was easy enough?
Well, it's just the volatility we are talking about. When you say that something is volatile, it means that there could be up and down. The first signal is the de-escalation signal, what we call the Trump effect, because the biggest driver was a series of statements from U.S. President. In a high-profile interview, he described the military operations against Iran as very complete and far ahead of schedule, that it is coming to an end. And this signals to investors that the war might be a short-term excursion rather than years-long conflict that would permanently destroy energy infrastructure. So Trump has given the escalation signals. He has, in the interview we saw, he has said that the operation is far ahead of schedule. And also, you also look at issue of diplomatic back channels, because reports surface of a significant telephone conversation between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The news that Russia, which is a major OPEC plus partner, was presenting proposals for a swift settlement, eased fears that the conflict would also expand into a broader world war involving other superpowers. There was a telephone conversation between Trump and Vladimir Putin. And remember, Russia is a big stakeholder when you talk about OPEC and a big oil exporting nation. So there were proposals, there were some of the things they discussed. It's also one of the signals that the crisis is coming to an end. and the market was calmed by the Group of Seven and the International Energy Agency. They held emergency meeting yesterday, and that meeting signaled that they are ready to flood the market with their strategic petroleum reserves. Yes, they told the world that we will not continue with this spike of price, this price spike we've seen everywhere. And they informed that they will flood the market with their strategic petroleum reserve. They call it SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, knowing that 1.2 billion barrels of emergency oil are available and could also act as safety net. And that discourages speculators from betting or even higher prices. Because why the prices are going up, apart from the Strait of Hormuz that was actually affected by this war going on in Iran, we've seen speculators on the other side. The uncertainties, a lot of things had led to the spike in price. And I'm just telling you that these things are being settled apart from the Strait of Hormuz. Okay,
so at this point, I'm going to prompt this very question. We'll go for this very commercial break. We might not need to respond to it because the issue now is we are looking at what is playing out there. For Nigeria as a country, we are making more money from this very thing, but it's having negative impacts on Nigerians here at home.
Yes.
And from what we gathered, from this very hike in the price of crude oil, Nigeria is making so much money, just like you have highlighted. And from every evidence, Nigeria is making about $14 million every day. If you look at our budget benchmark, it's about $60 per barrel.
$60.
And we are selling more than that. That means we are making excess money. So the money coming in from this, what is government going to do with that very money? Are they going to plan on how to invest it on something very specific, just like some other countries are doing? Or it's just going to be money they're going to, create a buffer, money they're going to, say that at the end of the day, they were able to make more money than, or they were able to make more revenue than projected in the 2020 26 budget. In as much as we know that our crude oil production per day might vary. Yes, now I think we're doing about 1.64 million barrels per day, but we know that it does fluctuate. Last year December was 1.54 million barrels per day. So we're just wondering what government will be thinking. The money we're making in excess, are they going to invest it or just we do as normal business what it has been in Nigeria?
Remember, let me quickly say this before we go for break. I remember in the past when we had such conflict, we created different accounts, the excess crude account. Remember, that was the one created in 2004 by the Obasanjo administration to enable us to save up for this from this crisis so that we can use it later on. Remember, even the one we called the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, established in 2011. Remember, it was as a result of the similar crisis in the Middle East. Also, remember the dedicated accounts, the 1990s Gulf War windfall. So there had been different accounts created in the past for crisis like this, and where these monies were saved. But then corruption will never allow us to make good use of the monies as they were saved. But remember when during the time of Jonathan, the one I talked about in 2011, Rotimi Chibikamechi was saying, share the money, went to Supreme Court. I recall Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala saying, let's save up for the rainy days. Remember, there will be rainy days after reggae comes the blues, but they never listened. And the money was cheered up because Supreme Court ruled on that. And at the end of the day, we went into famine. That's what we went into thereafter. But you asked, what could it be used for now? I don't know if we are going to create a similar account to save up this, but we don't know how long this will last because there are signals everywhere that de-escalation is ongoing, it's underway.
Okay, stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Udala Radio 104.7 FM. Seriously authentic.
Onitsha, ndị nwe ahịa, nke a bụ ụzọ anyị si asị unu daalụ maka ọmarịcha otu afọ nke nzikọrịta ozi Udala Radio dị otu afọ n'ọnwa Maachị a. N'ọnwa n'ọnwa Maachị a niile Udala nwere onyinye pụrụ iche maka ịgba afọ ọhụrụ a. Ịzụta advert slot abụọ, inwe otu mgbakwunye onyinye n'efu. Nụ ịnụrụ nke ọma, ohere nke mgbasa ozi ahịa, ozi ọbụla maọbụ nke program, ịkwụ ụgwọ, nweta ohere abụọ, anyị agbakwunyere gị otu. Nke a bụ ohere ị nwere ime ka ndị Ọnịcha na obodo ndị ọzọ nụ ma mara maka ahịa gị. Gbata ọsọ ozugbo n'ihi ohere ọpụrụ iche a malitere ugbu a ma bụrụ nke ga-abịa n'isi njedebe n'ụbọchị nke 31 n'ọnwa Maachị nke afọ a, n'ọnwa mgbakwunye afọ Udala. Maka ndebanya na ajụjụ, kpọọ anyị na 0803-350-4206 maọbụ ịbịa n'ụlọ ọrụ anyị dị n'Ọnịcha na nọmba 5 Okono Street n'okirikiri DMGS Roundabout. Ya bụ inwe ike ịkpọ anyị na 0803-350-4206 maọbụ ịbịa n'ụlọ ọrụ anyị na nọmba 5 Okono Street n'okirikiri DMGS Roundabout Ọnịcha. Udala Radio emeela otu afọ n'ọnwa Maachị a, ọkpọkọpi n'ezie.
Please listen to this important information on your good health. Do you know that many deaths nowadays are caused by ignorance on drug abuse? Do you know that many males and females now resort to the consumption of unhygienic concoctions for the treatment of various diseases? Do you know that some even take their lab results to traditional healers for interpretation? Now listen, abuse of scientific or traditional drug destroys the body system mechanism and it kills. Consumption of expired, adulterated, substandard and unpasteurized traditional herbal mixture could lead to health complications. So detoxification of the body and restoration of the functional organs is always necessary for your good health.
This message is sponsored by Anti-Drug Abuse Incorporated Headquarters, Annex Sunshine Hospital, number 4 Obanye Street, Onitsha, Anambra State, Nigeria. 08033206819.
Drug abuse is an enemy to your good health. Be warned.
Join Anti-Drug Abuse Health Education every Wednesday by 8:45 a.m. on Udala Radio 104.7 FM Onitsha.
Udala Radio 104.7 FM. Seriously authentic. You're listening to the Polity. Get involved now.
Okay, thank you for staying tuned to Udala Radio 104.7 FM. You are listening to the Polity, and it's now 30 minutes past 10 a.m. My name is Franklin Beginner with Tony Olisambeki on this very program. Before the break, we talked about what is happening with our oil and gas sector. No thanks to the crisis in Iran, the war that U.S. and Israel waged in Iran over what they called, nuclear weapon enrichment and what have you not. So we have to switch gears now to look at other development, other development in the polity. So only yesterday, the appeal court ruled on the PDP harmonized suit, and at the end of the day, the appeal court upheld the nullification of the Barda Convention, which was held last year. Don't forget that the Court of First Instance had nullified that very convention, saying that PDP did not abide by the rules. And yesterday, appeal court said that PDP cannot rely on internal party affairs to repackage what it called violation of the 1999 Constitution, the party's constitution, and then the Electoral Act. Let's begin with knowing what the appeal court actually, decided yesterday before we now talk about what it bodes for the party, whether the block of Turaki, what if you're going to advise them to head to Supreme Court or begin at this point in time to negotiate on how they can share power. After all, the Wike block is planning for a convention happening this month.
If you look at appeal court judgment yesterday, we talked about it briefly. We said we are not going to preempt it, and I did say yesterday that it may turn out to be that which you may be thinking or which you may be wishing, and then there are those that wish the outcome that we saw yesterday, and then it turns out to be in their own favor. But let's look at the major highlights of appeal court judgment. The first is the National Convention was declared unlawful, and the appeal court nullified the PDP's convention held in Ibadan, Oyo State. That was on November 15 to 16, 2025. Remember that very convention produced Kabiru Tamino Turaki-led National Working Committee as its national leadership. The appeal court ruled that the exercise violated the 1999 Constitution, the Electoral Act of 2022, and the PDP's own constitution and guidelines. We're going to come back to that. And we also look at other highlight, which was barring the Independent National Electoral Commission from recognizing or validating the convention results or the Turaki-led executive. Remember, Justice James Omotosho had given an order sometime around October 31st, 2025, that bars INEC from making such recognition. So it was a case where the appeal court upheld the earlier Federal High Court order. Then there was also this appeal by Turaki faction, which was dismissed because the 3-member panel led by Justice Uchechukwu Onyemenam also unanimously dismissed the consolidated appeals filed by Turaki-led faction. They described the convention as contemptuous, self-help, and an affront to judicial authority. The court was particularly annoyed that PDP proceeded with this convention despite subsisting restraining orders, including one by Justice Peter Lifu, requiring the national chairmanship nomination form be sold to Sule Lamido. So if you look at the areas the appeal court felt that PDP violated, one, that there were no valid state congresses in at least 14 states, that before you have convention that will produce national leadership of a party, first and foremost, there will be congresses that will produce delegates that will eventually vote at the convention that will produce the leadership of a political party. That about 14 states never had any valid state congresses. The appeal court also went on yesterday to say that even convention notice given to INEC was improperly issued. They say that it was only signed by the national chairman, not co-signed by the national secretary as required by INEC guidelines and PDP's constitution. Because the constitution of PDP says that for convention to hold, the national chairman and the national secretary will sign the notice. But according to appeal court yesterday, it was only signed by Damagun, where the young man or the old man from Imo State, the national secretary, did not sign. In fact, at the point he claimed that his signature was forged so as to have PDP to go on with their convention, and also cited disobedience to court orders and failure to comply with statutory preconditions, that there were court orders before the convention stopping the convention, but the appeal court did not also acknowledge the court order that says that the convention should also go on. They hinge on the ones that bar the convention. They did not hinge on the one that asked that the convention should be held. There was an Oyo State High Court that gave order that the convention be held. So appeal court yesterday was so much concerned about the order stopping the convention. They did not also factor the order that allowed the convention to go on. But they also, the court affirmed the suspension of key officers like National Secretary Samuel Ayanwu. Yes, the court affirmed his suspension because he has been the person Wike has been using to cause this disarray in PDP. When he was suspended by Damagun-led faction, the court upheld that his suspension still remained valid. And also the National Legal Advisor, Kamaluddin Ajibade, remember he was one of those who were suspended by Damagun before the convention. The court also held that the suspension of National Advisor Kamaluddin Ajibade was in order. And all other people that were also suspended. I'm aware that the courts awarded 2 million naira cost against the Turaki-led appellants because they were the ones that appealed and their appeal was consolidated. And there was also another drama because I saw some dailies, some national dailies. They made an embarrassment of the outcome of the court yesterday. I'm going to give my personal opinion, but I want to just first and foremost x-ray and put out what happened yesterday. But it was not properly captured by some national dailies. Some national dailies went on to say that appeal court has recognized Wike's faction. That's what some of the national dailies went on to say, that Wike has won, that appeal court recognized Wike's faction. That's not true. That's not correct. Many of them, they did not do their homework very well. Because if you look at yesterday's judgment, March 9, 2026, major 2 points was the nullification of the Ibadan National Convention and the entire Kabiru Taminu Turaki-led National Working Committee, and also restraining INEC from recognizing or dealing with Turaki executives. And the court did not in any way affirm any faction as the PDP authentic faction. I saw where some dailies said that the Abdurrahman faction of Wike was recognized. The court did not recognize that. Technically, the court, just like I said earlier on, did not name or affirm any other person, even the Magun, Wike faction, or any caretaker committee as the official recognized leadership of the PDP. The party is still technically without a court-validated national leadership.
No, so as it stands now, the Turaki faction said they are going to head to Supreme Court to explore the last resort and see what can become of this very thing. Those on Wiki side are saying, come over to Macedonia, let's align, see how we can move on in the terms of the party. And don't forget that this party is actually beating against deadline, of course. In the Electoral Act, there is a provision that parties must, provide electronic electronic register, which other parties are going ahead to do now, and PDP is doing nothing. And that signals that it might be difficult for PDP to be active in the 2027 general election. Now, let's look at what stands before the Turaki faction. Would you advise them to go to Supreme Court to explore? Perhaps it could be an avenue for the Supreme Court to look at its judgments on what amounts to party internal affairs and see whether there could be a review based on what the Supreme Court has said, or if Supreme Court is going to stand by it and maybe offer more clarification of what its judgment is all about.
Before going to your question, Appeal Court yesterday did say that what it did not in any way amount to interference of courts in the internal affairs of the party, that it has power to invalidate any election, party leadership, if it did not follow right procedure. That's what Appeal Court was trying to say. That it cannot decide for a party who is their leader. No. That we are short of doing that. In fact, they couldn't have done that. They cannot tell a party who becomes their national leadership or state leadership. But they can always fault the process through which a particular leadership emerge, and they can invalidate it. More like asking the party, go back and redo this. They can't decide for a party who becomes their leader or their leadership. They can invalidate such process and urge them to go back. That's what they said yesterday, that people should not mistake his judgment as interfering in the internal affairs of the political party. But Turaki faction is saying that the court failed to treat its leadership crisis as purely internal party affairs. They raised jurisdiction issue. They argue that the court had no business meddling in what is essentially a political and internal PDP matter. And they cited different Supreme Court judgments saying appeal court, you lack jurisdiction. Once the appeal comes before you, all you could have done would be go back and put your house in order without making any binding decision, telling INEC not to recognize this person or not to recognize this person. You have no power to tell INEC who to recognize or not. That by telling INEC who to recognize is as a case or a way of trying to interfere in its internal affairs. If you think that the convention was not properly done, you can as well tell them to go and redo it, as against telling INEC who to recognize or not. And of course, the Turaki faction say that there was wrong interpretation of the law on suspended officers, because they specifically for the court's interpretation regarding the suspended national legal advisor. And the judgment held he could not act or authorize actions like issuing a convention notice because of the suspension. And then the Turaki side is saying this was a misreading of the law and party constitution. The most important thing is that they must approach the appeal court. For me, I have always believed that if there are those who would want to come from the back corner to upstage themselves as authentic party leadership, the court should be wary of that. The court should be also conscious of those who would want to come from corners. We know very well that before the convention, I think what the court cited was the issue why it nullified the convention. There was a restraining court order. There was a restraining order. And I asked, has any court power to restrain a convention that has not held? That's where I have my grounds.
Now, Tony, let's look at this before we get to go for this very commercial.
Okay.
This coinage, internal party matters, because that's where the issue lies. If you look at the Supreme Court decision or judgment on party internal affairs, it means that the court generally do not have the restriction, to interfere in the internal management or leadership decisions of political parties. They are saying that, these things must be resolved within the party using its constitution and internal mechanism. Then when you now go to pick up issues, you talk about issues about leadership. Does it abound to party internal affairs? Who becomes the leader and what have you not? Membership, nomination of candidates for different political positions, the issue of internal positions, who is going to hold this and who is going to hold that. These things, do they amount, all of them, are they within the ambit of internal affairs of the party, or there is an imputation somewhere that we need to understand so that whatever the court is saying, we'll be able to understand it in that very sphere?
Well, for me, just like I was trying to explain, nomination, the convention, parties in the eyes of the law, they are like families. No court tells them who is their father or who is their mother, who is the sister or who is this. No court comes into their affairs based on previous Supreme Court rulings. And where they want to hold their meeting, a court comes in to say, don't hold this meeting. For me, you are interfering. You are interfering. They want to hold a convention. But the court, before saying that they should not do that, the court felt that they did not satisfy certain provisions before, because for you to hold convention, the national chairman and national secretary must give INEC what? Notice to that convention. And the Supreme Court has held that even if INEC comes or not, it does not invalidate the outcome of that very convention. INEC role is supervisory. Their role is not to determine, it's not a determining role, but rather advisory role. Even if, let's assume that PDP goes on to hold this convention without properly notifying INEC, I think court will find the party for not properly not invalidating, not notifying INEC does not amount to invalidation of the outcome of the party convention.
So are you faulting the appeal court judgment on this PDP crisis?
Appeal court, for me, didn't get things, there are things they didn't get right. Where they based on the fact that the notice to convention was duly signed by one person and it did not, the other person did not sign it. It is insignificant when you know that based on Supreme Court ruling that notice cannot invalidate the outcome. Just like during party primaries, if INEC was not properly notified before party primaries, it does not invalidate the outcome of the primaries. Rather, most times we've seen fines are imposed on political parties for not doing this the way they ought to have done it, not invalidating it. When you know that a particular thing will not invalidate the outcome of a project and you use it as a basis to even invalidate the outcome, when service notice cannot invalidate the outcome according to Supreme Court, and when it was properly not served, you will now use it as one of the bases to invalidate the outcome. It is for me antithetical to Supreme Court judgments in the past. I'm just trying to speak law here now.
Okay. Now you made reference to this because if you look at that principle for Supreme Court, in simple terms, simply means that political parties are voluntary organizations. That's number one. Number two is that they have their own constitutions and rule. And thirdly is that courts usually cannot interfere in how they run their internal matters. And now, but there are some exceptions that need to be noted in terms of the Supreme Court precedent. It talks about that courts cannot intervene if the political party violates its own constitution. Sorry, it said the court can only intervene if political parties violates its own constitution, or if the dispute affects statutory rights under the Electoral Act or the Nigerian Constitution. Perhaps that could be where the appeal court base its judgment on. But if you look at some other judgment that have been given in the past, let's make reference to the judgment involving a Labour Party leadership case.
Julius Abure.
Exactly. Now, those who were contesting the leadership of Julius Abure felt that that his tenure expired, and he went on to hold a convention in violation of the party's constitution.
Yeah,
that was their ground.
Yeah,
but they went to court. Supreme Court did what it did.
Let me refresh your memory in that case, because the Supreme Court, it was a ruling on April 4th, 2025, where the Supreme Court held and also ruled that leadership and tenure disputes is a political party internal affairs which no courts have jurisdiction over it. Issue of disputes, tenure disputes. In fact, it set aside the Court of Appeal's earlier recognition of Julius Abure, because Court of Appeal, before that time, this same Court of Appeal has recognized Julius Abure as LP chairman. Supreme Court struck out the judgment of Court of Appeal and told Court of Appeal, you have no power to recognize anybody as the leader or the national chairman or whoever of that political party. You have no jurisdiction. That's what Supreme Court told Court of Appeal. Many times Supreme Court has told Court of Appeal the same story. Court of Appeal does not listen. Not in any way. If you also look at Samuel Anyanwu and PDP versus PDP and others, the National Secretary dispute, that was the ruling made on 21st of March 2025, last year. The Supreme Court declared a fight over who is the authentic PDP National Secretary. And in internal affairs, it did not say that this person is the National Secretary or that person is National Secretary. Remember the young man from Enugu State? It was one of the grounds that Udokoye, one of the grounds the governor of Enugu State left PDP. The matter came before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court went on to set aside, in fact, he set aside the judgment of Federal High Court and Court of Appeal that had sacked Senator Samuel Anyanwu. Court of Appeal sacked Senator Samuel Anyanwu and recognized Udokoye before that judgment of 21st March 2025. But the Supreme Court said no court can say who is this or who is that, and says that it is an internal party affairs and asks them to go and decide who becomes whoever. And if you also go to the issue of Bashir Muhammad Dahatu and Ibrahim Samini Turaki, which was a suit many years back, I don't want to cite that one because that one is even old and outdated. But if you want to go by the one of Alimodu Cherif and Makarov, who was the caretaker committee at that time, it was a ruling on 12th of July, if I can still remember, 2017, where the Supreme Court resolved the leadership dispute by affirming Ahmed Lawan. There is Ahmed Makarov national, but he has since shifted from such ground. It was the last time Supreme Court mediated into internal affairs of a political party by stating categorically that Ahmed Makarov was the authentic national caretaker committee of the PDP. But since then, after their 2017 ruling, Supreme Court has maintained consistency that when these issues of leadership comes before it keeps saying no court has jurisdiction. Some people say they want to hold convention, and you say they cannot hold convention.
Tony, have you had consistency in Supreme Court judgment when it comes to the issue about party leadership? Having in mind what happened within the ABGA structures when two persons were laying claim, or when one person was laying claim to it's two persons who were laying claim to the party national chairmanship position. We know how the whole thing happened. Going back and forth, at the end of the day, Supreme Court now became categorical about who is party leadership. In that case, one person was saying that the Supreme Court pronounced him as the authentic national chairman, and even went to the FCT High Court
and filed contempt proceeding against the then INEC National Chairman Yakub Mahmood, that he be committed to prison for contempt of Supreme Court judgment. And then you look at Yakub Mahmood, out of fear, went on and recognized him as the national chairman, thinking that he was obeying the Supreme Court ruling, until appeal court went on and said that it was a typographical error, which was acknowledged, for the fact that your name was insinuated, which has been corrected, does not in any way pronounce you as the national chairman of the party. And it get back to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court fired back that at no time did we. It was becoming categorically, because somebody has said that Supreme Court pronounced him. Supreme Court said, we did not pronounce you the national chairman of Abga, and there is no way we could have pronounced you.
So can we say we have had consistency in judgment of the Supreme Court when it comes to recognizing or recognizing who is the leadership or who is the leader of a political party?
Since 2017 till date, there has been consistency. And I'm just trying to tell you, the case of Abga was where somebody is saying that he was recognized by Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, we did not recognize you.
All right. So let's go to the commercial desk now. We'll go for that very commercial break. Once we return, we take your calls. Don't forget that the phone lines are 0803-221-6973 or 0803-827-6694. You can go to our Facebook page and drop your comment there. We'll be right back.
Udala Radio 104.7 FM. Seriously authentic.
Quality bread, Wendy's bread, for your family breakfast. Wendy's bread, our package and it is yellow. Wendy's bread, mama papa they like Wendy's bread, chicha and do. Wendy's bread, even children they like Wendy's bread, Wendy's bread, and in town. Wendy's bread, you get it better, tasty, we go sweet your belly. Wendy's bread, Wendy's your bachichoma. Wendy's bread,
Wendy's bread, tasty bread. You can contact us on our official address, Second Business Park, Enugu Road, GRA, beside Onitsha, Anambra State. We also have another branch at St. Michael Plaza at Tani Road. Also contact us on 070-1149-1571. Wendy's bread, your tasty bread.
Wendy's bread.
When you think of roofing, think of strength. When you think of durability, think of beauty. And when you think of all three combined, think Best Aluminium MFG Limited. At Best Aluminium, we don't just manufacture roofing sheets. We create protection, comfort, and style for your home and business. Whether you're building from scratch or repairing an old roof, we have exactly what you need. Our products include stone-coated roofing sheets, aluminum roofing sheets, and colored roofing sheets. But that's not all. We also offer residential and commercial roofing services, roof repairs, gutters, emergency roofing services, and even durable cookwares that bring quality to your kitchen. Visit us today at 30/32 Anyika Street, Awada Obosi, Anambra State, or call us right now on 0806-416-2374 or 0706-059-6203. Onitsha ndị nwe ahịa, nke a bụ ụzọ anyị si asị unu daalụ maka ọmarịcha otu afọ nke nzikọrịta ozi. Udala Radio dị otu afọ n'ọnwa Maachị a. N'ọnwa Maachị a niile, Udala nwere onyinye pụrụ iche maka ịgba afọ ọhụrụ a. Ịzụta advert slot abụọ, inwe otu mgbakwunye onyinye n'efu. Ịnụrụ nke ọma, ohere nke mgbasa ozi ahịa, ozi ọbụla maọbụ nke program ịkwụ ụgwọ, nweta ohere abụọ, anyị agbakwunyere gị otu. Nke a bụ ohere ị nwere ime ka ndị Onitsha n'obodo ndị ọzọ nụ ma mara maka ahịa gị. Gbata ọsọ ozugbo n'ihi ohere ọ pụrụ iche a malitere ugbu a ma bụrụ nke ga-abịa n'isi njedebe n'ụbọchị nke 31 n'ọnwa Maachị nke afọ a, n'ọnwa mgbakwunye afọ Udala. Maka ndebanya na ajụjụ, kpọọ anyị na 0803-350-4206 maọbụ ịbịa n'ụlọ ọrụ anyị dị n'Onitsha na nọmba 5 Okono Street n'okirikiri DMGS Roundabout. Ya bụ inwe ike ịkpọ anyị na 0803-350-4206 maọbụ ịbịa n'ụlọ ọrụ anyị na nọmba 5 Okono Street n'okirikiri DMGS Roundabout Onitsha. Udala Radio emeela otu afọ n'ọnwa Maachị a, ọkpọkọpi n'ezie.
O nwere keke windscreen pụtara ọhụụ.
ịzụrụ ya tinye na keke gị ịbara okwu ụlọ asị m gịnị ịbara okwu ụlọ maka na ọda awawa bụ unbreakable windscreen akọlụ ndị China ọsọ gị tụọ ya okwute kụọ ya hama inwegodi accident ọda awawa gị bụ onye keke ọ bụrụ na windscreen gị wara awa mee ngwa dozie ya tupu anya gọọmenti erute n'ebe ị nọ ngwa jee n'ebe ọbụla a na-ere akụrụngwa keke ka ịzụta ọda awawa windscreen ma ọ bụ ị bịa na Method 105 Upper New Market Road Onitsha ọ dị nso na DMGS roundabout na ncherịta Rudo Base Filling Station ekwentị anyị 08032933719 ọda awawa ugegbe kwesịrị ntụkwasị obi.
From the commercial city of Onitsha comes Udala Radio 104.7 FM, the voice of the region, where authentic news and entertainment meet. Udala Radio 104.7 FM, seriously authentic.
You're listening to the Polity. Get involved now.
You're listening to the Polity on Udala Radio 104.7 FM. It's time for you to get involved in this very conversation. My name is Franklin Bekandan with Tono Disambeki. We are going to go to the full line stretch away to have your input. Good morning. Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, please try again. Let's see, 0803-221-6973 or 0803-827-6694. Hello, good morning.
Hello, Franklin.
Good morning.
Good morning, my chief speaker, Tony Sambeki.
You're welcome.
The voice of Honorable Mayor Okume JP Okulola Ochendo Nobi on the line.
Yes, go on.
Can I go on?
You can go on, sir. Go on.
Tony Sambeki, I thank you, and Franklin, I thank you for all your policies this morning. But Tony Sambeki, I want to ask you a question. Not that I'm supporting what Dangote is doing, and indirectly I'm supporting what he's doing. What holds Nigeria, a whole mighty Nigeria, upon the oil we have, upon the money we generate from oil, from having their own refinery? What is the holding Harcourt refinery, Kaduna refinery, and the Warri refinery from working? What is the problem? Now we are blaming Dangote, a single person. Now we are blaming his hiking of petrol and adding money. Why should he not do that? Since you people gave him the power to do that, what would cause NNPC from having production away from that? What actually happened in the crisis of GDP is that you can see, like I said, I think yesterday I said it, that the presidency is doing everything possible to destabilize everybody so that we have one party system, so that we will continue with the governance of Nigeria. Yes, now 31 governors out of 36 have defected to APC, and all they are defecting with their supporters. But what I want to tell Nigerians is that we, the followers, we know what we want. Whether the governor defects to APC, now we see what is happening in the country. Nothing is moving. We are hungry. The education system is not moving well. Health system not moving well. No good infrastructure. Security we are not fighting. I mean, I don't see the reason people will be systems they are doing now, maybe discussing or hoping that APC will continue in this government. We have to change. We have to make a change. I want to appeal to people. Please and please, let us open our eyes and elect a credible person that will change the way of Nigeria, so that we will have our life to live and live well.
All right.
Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Major. Your question is noted. Before we leave, of course, we have to address your question. And don't forget that, like we said when we're doing the review of the headlines, that Zamfara State Governor has left PDP for the APC. So APC now has 31 governors.
Good morning, Franklin.
Yes, good morning. Yes, we can hear you. Your name?
Okay, I'm sorry for
your name?
I want to appreciate Chief Tony this morning for his analysis. The truth is that NLPC and the Dangote are taking off the next, and it's better we start scaling up. How can Dangote be making billions out of us? Notwithstanding this, our pride, notwithstanding this nonsense surrounding this country called Nigeria. Listen, I think somebody somewhere, because there was someone in the hierarchy called Dangote to order. Because he's exploiting Nigerians. That's the truth. Fuel this one is 150. And a lot of action is going on because of this issue. Listen, and when it goes, it doesn't avoid the price. You only keep it at the essence of Nigerians. Listen, so I'm going to reduce his price, pump price, so that all these businesses to reduce their pump price, the normal price, so that just will stop this suffering.
All right.
That's my take this morning.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I just discovered that in Egypt, that the oil price in Egypt has risen by about 30%. I'm talking about the price of petrol in Egypt. Hello. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Yes. Your name?
Yeah, my name is George.
Josh, go on.
You see, all we need for our country now, we need Polity. Because, yes, people have been saying so many things about the hike of fuel and everything. And what the last call I just said, the most other thing. This is one of the major problems that people was, that time that he was fighting everybody. The NFCC consigned the food and what people.
Hello, are you still there? Hello? Okay, so I think you have to try again because we stopped hearing you. So if you can try to call back, we're going to appreciate that. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Franklin. Dr. Antonio Sambiki, very good morning to you.
You're welcome.
Welcome on board.
Chidi Chukwuma joining you from Ugo.
All right, go on.
Yes, talking of the increase in the oil price in Nigeria and also other parts of the world. The other time I listened to your analysis when you made a comparative analysis of that. And I discovered that in different countries of the world, including the Africa, even those that will supply this oil, that the increase is insignificant, a slight increase. But the question here is why this astronomical increase in Nigeria, when we have Dangote, who people believe that he is the Messiah. And at that time, when we are debating on him, on this issue of one man, one shoe in Nigeria, having the whole thing alone, that I have never seen a monopolist being a friend of the people everywhere in the world. A monopolist is the enemy of consumers, and the enemy of consumers are the enemy of the people. And the one is just coming out of gradually, just because of a little this crisis. The oil that is having in reserve, what is he doing with that? And we know the amount of money that he got those oil and refine it and have it in reserve. That just because of a slight problem in this thing, it keep on increasing this price. I think that one, it doesn't have the feeling of the people at all. And I'm calling on America to do something. We remember during the Gulf War, when Bush was in power, we experienced this kind of problem, and we know how they try to cushion the whole effect because they open up their strategic oil reserve to make sure that the people did not fall short of the oil supply. And it worked effectively. And the talking of the windfall, yes, we remember how somebody pocketed the whole thing. So a different thing altogether. Having a windfall, what effect on Nigeria? Can we make judicious use of this windfall? Or can we experience the same problem, being a Nigerian problem or the Nigerian situation, when one person can lay hand on our economy and take it alone?
All right.
Can we
Thank
have
you.
the same experience this time?
Okay.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Based on your question, I think when we were making analysis, we talked about some African countries where the price increase has not been significant compared to what we have in Nigeria. And we said if you go to those countries, they have some regulatory buffers, they have some pricing windows, and then they tighten intervention by the government. If you look at Angola, for instance, Angola has not had that kind of a increase in price as we are seeing in Nigeria. If you go to Angola, Angola is still running subsidy while it's trying to gradually phase it out. In fact, as of 2024, we learned that Angola spent about $2.7 billion on subsidies just to ensure that citizens will be able to get petrol at a reasonable price. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Afan.
My name is Franklin.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Franklin.
Yes, good morning. Your name?
My name is Mr. Okoye from Orange Kingdom.
Go on, Mr. Ignatius.
My speaker, this judgment of the Supreme proves that PDP neither here or there. If you watch it, if you come to your analysis. I was listening weekend yesterday was something I'm posting. He had told us to come, to let them come together. But the election is coming on. With this, they cannot produce anything unless they come together. To me, I feel that the Apicon did not give the right judgment here. How can a person that he claimed that are suspended for a long time to come and make a statement that and the party agree with it? And Apicon say that the young and others are suspended.
Okay. Hold on. The judgment that appeal court gave was not dependent on any suit filed by Wike nor Samuel Anyanwu. Rather, a case filed by 4 members of PDP who felt that they were unjustly denied participation in the convention, the likes of Akobundo and Co.
Okay, now I understand what you say. But I don't disagree on that the party has right to choose any leader. So there's some interpretation of that judgment. In favor of the ruling party. The ruling party don't want PDP to participate in any election. Let them go to appeal. Let them forget about the election of 2027. Let them forget about it. Let them go to election. Let them go to appeal. And we will do the appeal in the second way. I think we'll give them the right judgment.
All right.
And let us start building from there again. The next election.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Tony, fate of PDP as it stands now, because Udala, who at a point in time said even if he is the only man standing, he will stay in PDP. But later he said the appeal court judgment is going to decide his fate. And less than 5 hours after the judgment surfaced, he declared for the APC with his deputy and about 15 members of the House. In fact, the Speaker of the House and 14 members earlier 2 days ago announced that they were leaving PDP. So as it stands now, do you see PDP having a governor going into 2027 general election?
Well, I don't see that, because if you look at the only man standing now, Chei Makinde, and possibly the governor of Bauchi State, Bala Muhammad, these are the 2 men standing as we speak now. And they have got their options. Chei Makinde has done his first term. He's doing his second term. Bala Muhammad has done his first term. He's doing his second term. So they are not coming back. They will be thinking about who will succeed them. And possibly they have other things they have in up their sleeves. And I'm aware that they are in negotiation. They may not come out open. There is no doubt. They may not come out open. They are perfecting their their political strategies. They are perfecting it, no doubt. They're going to go for Supreme Court interpretation of this judgment, even if Supreme Court says that they are not looking at to win state in next election, but they want to field candidates. They want to test one thing or the other. As Supreme Court, I believe, will rule in time, and maybe there could be a candidate who is popular, but he's looking for or shopping for platform and may get into PDP. It could be any part of the country, and he may get that if PDP of the Supreme Court nullifies the appeal court judgment. But if the appeal court judgment stays, PDP has no faith. It means that it is the last bus stop of PDP. If let's assume the Supreme Court upholds the judgment of appeal court, it means that PDP is completely buried. Because we've seen many times that PDP is dead. There was a time that it was in coma. From being in coma, it died, and we're talking about burial. So, can a dry bone rise up again?
Okay, so quickly, a question that was asked by the mayor, what stopped Nigeria from having its own refinery? Let's quickly address that before we get to leave.
It's a very big shame that we don't have our refineries working the way they ought to be working. And recall, like so many things that have happened in this country in the time past, we've seen situations where the money we save from windfall, these monies were never accounted for, and these monies went the way we couldn't have wanted them to go on. The truth remains that, look at Mele Kerry, remember we were told over 200 and something trillion unexplained expenditures and money flows. He has not been able to give us right explanations. That is what? Corruption. Why is it that our refineries are not working? Corruption. They don't want it to work. There are those that felt that subsidy is the best way to go. And now Dangote has come up, and we thought by the time we have, many Nigerians thought that if we have Dangote refineries working, that pump price will be very low, and then the fuel will be very cheap. Many people thought that thing. When Dangote was building this refinery, they were thinking that I said it won't be that way to business. And that's exactly what we are having. If we have our own refineries, government can easily set one or two things going and then decide certain things on its own because it's state-owned. Okay. But why are they not working? Corruption.
All right.
There are those that would not want it to work.
Okay, so we're going to leave with this very post on our Facebook page. Dr. Ms. Imo Lebara from Ure says that an oil-producing country like Nigeria is depending on foreign country for crude, so that Nigerians are buying fuel, kerosene, diesel, and cooking gas at very exorbitant prices more than countries without oil. Is it not a sign of failure of a government? Why does this government take delight in seeing her citizens suffer? With all the trillions borrowed, our refineries are still lying moribund. When are we going to have new lease of life in this country? It has been suffering, sufferinger, and suffering guest. Okay, in the words of fella, suffering and smiling. Then also Francis Omagan Namani says that he's watching from Maguns in Enugu State. The federal government should do everything possible to address the current fuel price hike and other essential products. Where are we going from here, he's asking. At that point, or from this very point, we get to enter this conversation. Thank you, Tony, for being around, and we thank everybody that listened. Tomorrow is going to be another edition. My name is Franklin Ebuka. Thank you for being there. Good morning.